Joe showed his true colors. He got a little hot under the collar because Sleepy Joe doesn't like Americans speaking their minds and blaming him and his administration for inflation. Watch this.
I'm sick of this stuff. We have to talk about it because the American people think the reason for inflation is government spending more money. Simply not true.
Yes, it is, and I'm sick of you lying. I'm up to here with it, Joe. My next guest, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, knows just how much of a disaster this regime has become. Gaetz writing an op-ed recently entitled, "I won't vote to hike gas prices for my constituents. There are better ways to squeeze Putin's gangster government." Joining us now, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Matt, welcome back to the program. How you been?
Well, I'm good, Dan, though it is frustrating to hear Joe Biden act as though the trillions and trillions that Congress continues to approve, often on a bipartisan basis, doesn't have a direct impact on the inflation crushing American families. And it is this energy economy that is driving so much of the inflation. Even if it's not at the pump, the goods you are buying have to move. Those fuel costs are rising. And so it creates compounding inflation with a number of commodities. Food security really going to be something that Americans are going to be concerned about increasingly in the coming months because of these policies. You did a great expose on how their policies are going to make us less safe vis-a-vis Iran. And you know, the great challenge here is that while they want a virtue signal about Russian oil, they then want to replace Russian oil with Iranian oil. And you know what? Iranian oil is stained with blood too. And when Iran has a whole lot more money, they're either going to use it to advance their nuclear program, which poses a direct threat to Americans, or they're going to go buy Russian arms. They're going to go and, I mean, you have bilateral meetings going on right now with Iran and Russia that I think are going to result in Russia getting a windfall from the Iran nuclear deal.
And don't forget China.
It shows that,
don't forget China, Matt. They're in there too, talking to both of them. They're all three colluding right now.
Well, and we've now driven Asia's largest producer of energy, Russia, into the arms of Asia's largest consumer of energy. That weakens the entire sanctions regime that our country seeks to impose on a variety of different countries, but it shows the frailty of a sanctions-only approach. What would have been very helpful is if these Polish MiGs could have gotten in the hands of the Ukrainians. But instead of actually quietly doing that and getting that done, you had Jake Sullivan on television talking about it before it was happening. And then it looks like the Poles didn't want to face any retaliation from Russia, had concerns of their own. They were only willing to transport the MiGs to Ramstein. Then Biden blinked. We couldn't get them to the Ukrainians. And lo and behold, the Russians are still holding the high ground in the skies as Ukrainians bravely fight. So that's a circumstance where we didn't need to excessively entangle ourselves in the matters of Europe. We just had to not go and talk about it before it was actually happening, thus quelling a deal that could have saved a number of Iranian lives. What we are seeing tactically, though, Dan, is that these authoritarian regimes don't really invest in command and control, in leadership development. And so you've got these large convoys that are only inching closer to Kiev right now because it is one of the real frailties of the Russian fighting force that when things break down, when they don't go as well as planned, they haven't invested in that kind of, battlefield commander leadership to be able to solve these problems. So they're in quite the quagmire.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about how this administration, and Obama did it as well, they talk about things that the U.S. or our allied forces, joined forces might do before we do them. And I remember a guy that was in there for 4 years that we just got the job done. And then he bragged about it after we got it done and would point out, we're not going to tell the bad guys, what 45 would always say, what in the hell we're going to do. They're going to know when they hear the sounds of the rockets or the jets, and then we'll brag about it on the backside. And I want to play a quick soundbite from 45 from his rally this weekend in South Carolina that to me proves a really good point about his administration and how he handled our adversaries versus the clown that's in there now. And also, when Trump says this soundbite, he also throws the media under the bus, which they deserve it, because we all remember what the media and the left told us before Donald J. Trump took office, is that he would start World War III. So let's watch this and get your reaction on the backside.
Fake news said my personality would get us into a war. I'm telling you, that guy's going to get us into a war. But actually, my personality is what kept us out of war. I was the only president in nearly 4 decades who did not get America into any new conflicts. Instead, I brought our troops and our wonderful children back home.
Is he right, Matt? Is having someone in the White House who the bad guys are a little worried about because he might just drop a few bombs on you. That works because you have to lead through strength.
As a member of the Armed Services Committee, I worked very closely with President Trump on his foreign policy initiatives, and he understood the value of strategic ambiguity. You could even go back to his debates against Hillary Clinton, where he was very critical of an approach that was paint by numbers or predictable. You do this, we'll do that. Instead, Trump believed that you had to have these despots really fear a disproportionate reaction so that they would be contained. And there is no dispute that during the Trump presidency, Vladimir Putin was more contained than he was when he invaded Crimea under Obama or than when he now is invading Ukraine under Joe Biden. We also saw that strategic ambiguity does not mean weakness. When Assad used chemical weapons against his own people, Trump was right there to launch those Tomahawk missiles and ensure that that capability on the part of the Syrians was degraded. But it wasn't forecast, it wasn't gaslit,
Exactly.
It wasn't the subject of a bunch of meetings and hand-holding at the UN. It was action, action, action. And it's true that the United States was a stronger country when Donald Trump was president, but we were also a more strategic country because we did not forecast every action. I think Putin is playing, too often against that over transparency at times from the Biden regime.
Yep. Well, you can't play poker when you're Joe Biden and you're showing your hand. And that's what I feel like when I watch this guy every day. You don't show the bad guy your hand. Matt Gaetz, of course, got his Firebrand podcast representing Florida's first. Always a pleasure, Congressman. Take care.
Thank you, Dan.